Hey, this is Michael from Dark Tranquillity, The Halo Effect, and Grand Cadaver, and you're watching Richard the Metal Fan.
Hey everyone, Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2024 album review. It's been a while since I've done any album reviews, but I'm bringing you guys a new review, and we're going to be talking about the new album from the band Dark Tranquillity entitled Endtime Signals, which is out now through Century Media Records. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Dark Tranquillity, I'm pretty sure everybody has heard of them or at least know who they are. A melodic death metal band from Gothenburg, Sweden, been around since 1989, and Dark Tranquillity for me are one of my all-time favorite bands. I've seen them live about 3 times. Um, yeah, and they've put out classic albums such as like The Gallery, Projector, Fiction, Haven, and classic albums and stuff. And overall, I believe this is the band's 13th or 14th album, and this follows up their previous album, Moment, which came out in 2020. And with Moment, I definitely almost feels like it has like predictions, because that was written when the whole pandemic was happening. I think it was really a fucked up time for the whole music industry. But here we are, it's sort of like the coming out of the pandemic with End Time Signals. Now, a lot of people would say, like, with that, just from the album title, it almost kind of sound like it was the band's last album, but that is like far from the case when I had interviewed Martin Brandstrom. And this album, I feel like, is almost kind of feels like a sequel to Moment a little bit, but not really. That's how I would interpret it. I think it's a step up from the Moment in terms of like the musicianship and everything. Let's just talk about like the vocal work from Michael Stane. In my opinion, I think he's a really great vocalist. I think the way he has like that two different sides of his voice. Like he can go from having like the really harsher vocals to like even just like on heavier albums such as even like Damage Done, to even have like more cleaner vocals that were on like, for example, like older albums such as like Projector or Haven or even Fiction. And I just like how he has like the contrast between the two sides of his voice is just amazing. The guitar work on this album is tight from Johan Reynolds. This is the first album since probably I think it was Construct or even Atoma, which they have had just one guitarist, and I think Johan really stepped up in terms of like the riffs that he comes up with, and the soloing on here is just fucking great. And this album also is the first album with two new members, being Christian Jensen on bass and Joachim Nilsson on drums, and they both come up with some really good parts. Like the bass work is pretty audible from Christian. He definitely stepped up after Anders Iwers had left the band. And then new drummer Joachim Strandberg Nilsson. Definitely was hard shoes to fill after Anders Ivar, who pretty much been with the band since the beginning and started the band with Michael, and now Michael's pretty much the only original member left. But Joachim, he definitely brings in sort of like a new thing, kind of almost like rhythmically to Dark Tranquillity, and I think he really shines really well. And then the keyboards from Martin Brandstrom. In my honest opinion, I think he's one of the most underrated keyboard players out there. And I just love how his keyboard playing is almost adds like another depth or another kind of like layer to the Dark Tranquillity sound. So yeah, I pretty much rambled on for about 3.5 minutes. So let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is Shivers and Voids. Now, this song right from the get-go is just classic melodic death metal. Has a really great guitar melody, which is layered underneath like the harsh vocals in the chorus, which does really well. And I think another great highlight on here is the guitar solo. The solo does just enough to carry the song almost back in the chorus, but it doesn't overwhelm or sort of like take anything away from what the song was meant to be. And the choice of the melodies here are perfect to create sort of like a different kind of emotional atmosphere here, and this is one thing you'll notice throughout this album. Next up is Unforgivable. Now, I love this song. It has some really ripping guitars that holds the structure as sort of like the electronic elements sort of like emphasize the song. It also has a fresh surge of creativity and renewed spark that lyrically draws from like the strength and frustration and helplessness in the face of oppression. And I think it's a really great message behind it. Next up is Neuronal Fire. Now, the guitar melody on this chorus is just packed with emotion. There's like subtle touches of synths which elevate the song further, and the rhythm work is done by the drums, giving it almost kind of like a progressive kind of feel. And Joachim definitely shines well on the drumming on here. Next up is Not Nothing, and I love his song vocally, and I love Michael's clean vocals. The mixture of his growls and clean vocals are just amazing. It has that classic Dark Tranquillity sound while showing progression. It feels really polished sounding. Drowned Out Voices up next. Now, this song has a great job representing a bit of everything that this album has to offer, stretching between the melodic death metal and then the clean vocal work, which also kind of has, I guess, kind of like almost their alternative metal side. Next song on the album is called One of Us Is Gone. Now, this song has some really great orchestral ranges and sort of like really great lyrics that really just get really under your skin, and it just really just makes you feel what Michael is sort of like conveying in the song. Next up is The Last Imagination. Now, when you first hear the song right from the get-go, you can immediately tell that you're listening from Dark Tranquillity. It has that very distinct sound with the keys and the atmosphere, and Michael seems to have been realized since the whole band began, but it just sounds as good as he does 20 years ago. And this song sounds like a mixture of something from like Haven with sort of like from the more recent albums like We Are the Void or Construct, but in a good way. And this track has a really good groove all throughout, and the transition from verse to chorus really works well, and it has a nice solo too. Next up, Enforced Perspective. Now, this song is among the few songs on this album where you get more or less than everything I want from a Dark Tranquillity record here in 2024. Electronic keyboard sets the melodic idea of the most songs, strong lead guitars that secure sort of like the whole statement behind it, and the sick vocals from Michael just really brings it all together. Next up is Our Disconnect. Now, this song is pretty similar to Who One of Us Is Gone, but I feel like it's a lot heavier than that song. While both songs have the common have more of that kind of like dark and somber vibe with the keyboards in the whole song. Wayward Eyes. Now, this song has, in my opinion, probably one of the most catchiest choruses on the entire record. And this song almost kind of sounds a little bit more radio friendly. But it works really well because like the music behind it is very simple, but it's not as heavy as some of the other songs while still having harsh vocals throughout. A Bleaker Sun. Now, this song is almost like progressive metal sounding, but with more of a heavier edge to it. And the chorus almost sounds very black metal a little bit with the moody guitar work and then Michael's brutal screams. And I feel like this is one of the best examples of where Dark Tranquillity are aspiring to become and how they sort of like develop their sound. Next up is False Reflection. Now, this is pretty much has some really great lyrics like man-made monsters created by our own damn selves. And it almost kind of seems like how like humans can end up like making the world almost like in its demise. And it just has a really kind of like a bleak, kind of like somber vibe to it. Now, that's would be it for like the regular version of the album, but I want to talk about like the two bonus songs being Zero Sum and In Failure. Now, Zero Sum is just a really kick-ass song all throughout. But really the last song really is In Failure. Now, this song has a bigger focus on synths, which can be heard on here, and the keys sort of like give like kind of like a vibe that pretty much elevates the song, giving it a very unique sound. And the chorus on this song is just really catchy, and I just think it's a really great way to end this album. Now, overall, Endtime Signals by Dark Tranquillity, another evolution in the sound. It's not just a follow-up to Moment, or Moment isn't a follow-up to Atoma. It's just a natural evolution. So I would give this album a score. I'm going to give Endtime Signals by Dark Tranquillity a solid 8.5 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of the new Dark Tranquillity album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.